Feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be doing a lot more NBA coverage, draft, free agency, all that fun stuff going into the future. So let's get it started with the Clippers. So the Clippers lose to the Phoenix Suns in the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, they did not have Kawhi Leonard the entire series. Now, they played the Suns very, very close in that series. I feel like it kind of goes without saying that Kawhi, if he plays in that series, I think they can beat the Suns and head to the finals, and very well might beat the Bucks. But again, not going to go down that rabbit hole here. Looking towards the future for the offseason for the Clippers, it is important to note they have two big decisions to make. They need to figure out what they're doing with kind of their two big postseason producers in Reggie Jackson and Nicolas Batum. Both of them played really good. Batum kind of provides that guy who can be even a small ball five, and he is a guy who I believe is going to be somebody that is targeted by other teams in free agency. Can he get up to more than 10 million? I mean, he really saved his kind of his own skin last season by being able to play very well down the stretch of the year. He was kind of thought of as a player that probably wasn't going to really kind of get back in the league, is a little bit washed. He proves last year that he can continue to shoot the ball well, plays good enough defense. He's a guy who's a long wing defender. But Batum is a priority for the Clippers, in my opinion. Reggie Jackson, I think, is going to get a lot of money in free agency. Now, who pays him is interesting because he is another point guard to add to the list of point guards who are going to potentially be available. Lowry, Chris Paul, maybe. Mike Conley, I know those two are going to probably go back to their teams in Phoenix and Utah. But I ultimately do think that Reggie Jackson is good consolation prize for a team. Now, does he play a better role as like kind of the backups, like a sixth man point guard, or can he actually be a full-time starting point guard? That will be kind of the question. Where do the Clippers evaluate him, and kind of how is that going to go in the future? So those are the two guys that I think are really big priorities for them going to the offseason, and kind of something that to keep your eye on if you're a Clippers fan. Looking at kind of what they could do via trade, they're limited. Is anybody trying to trade for Patrick Beverley? Is anybody trying to trade for Marcus Morris? I think those guys are really good for what their roles are in LA. With the Clippers, I don't know if they're too good outside of those roles and outside of the Clippers organization. Kennard was a defensive liability in the playoffs, and there were times where Kennard wasn't playing a whole lot. Obviously, with the Kawhi injury, he played a little bit more, but they extended him last year, and then he kind of doesn't really play a whole lot of minutes. The Zubac situation is also interesting to watch. Like, do they feel like he's a long-term option? They traded 2 second-round picks for Rondo, so it would be an absolute travesty if the Clippers were to lose both Batum and Jackson, who were huge contributors again in the playoffs, and then have Kawhi out for most of the season, because then it's like, let's get into their picks. Also do want to shout out Terrence Mann, who was a good young piece for them, and a player that I think they enjoy being able to have, as they have traded good young players in the past and future assets in draft compensation. So pick swaps with the Clippers. They do have their pick at 26 this year. Oklahoma City has the right to swap its 2023 and with the Clippers, and then the 2025 first for Houston is protected. I'm not sure if I'm reading that right, but anyway, so the Clippers really just don't have any draft picks until 2027 and 28. So you make the most out of 25, I think, this year, and then you see kind of what it can get you. Maybe trade down, maybe trade out, whatever it may be. But this team doesn't really have capital to be able to trade for a guy like Damian Lillard. So, like, trying to add a third piece to the Clippers backcourt or to the Clippers big two, it's going to be hard to find. The other question is, I don't believe we've had official word on Serge Ibaka yet. He is a dude who I believe is going to be his stock is a little bit lowered, mostly just because he is not necessarily a guy that I think teams are very confident in moving forward, just due to his health. Missed a majority he missed all the playoffs and then a majority of the last half of the season. So do teams kind of get worried and say Serge is probably not the guy we want to go get? You kind of get worried there, and do the Clippers want to try to bring him back? Obviously, I believe he has a player option. I think he'll probably stay, get another stay and see maybe if he can make something of the year and get another contract next year, whether it be from the Clippers or somebody else. Other than that, I'm worried about the Clippers. I do think that the Kawhi situation really messes with them, and then on top of that, they could lose Reggie Jackson, Nicolas Batum. Let's look at potential trade rumors that we've been hearing for the Clippers. Let's see. There were the reports where like Kawhi was potentially going to leave the Clippers, but like there was no real big source to it, and it was kind of in question, and doesn't seem likely at all. Let's see here. The Clippers are expecting Kawhi to be back. Sharif Cooper. We'll do a draft stream tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning being the 29th day of the draft. We'll talk a little bit about kind of guys who I like, who might be picked lower, or some targets that I personally kind of think are good. Look, Sharif Cooper being targeted by the Thunder, Rockets, Warriors, Lakers, Clippers, and Celtics, I think that's a good thing, right? Like, he's got a lot of potential, and I think he'll be an interesting guy to see where he lands in the draft. Other than that, there's the offseason plan for the Clippers. Matthew Hurt from Duke worked out for the Clippers, and that is pretty much it. Assessing the recovery time. Yeah, I mean, a partial ACL tear in his right knee. I mean, that's kind of the report, I guess, but we haven't really gotten anything like super official from the Clippers. Maybe it just drops like in the middle of free agency or the draft or something. But yeah, so that's ultimately kind of what I think of the Clippers. I know this is going to be a shorter stream for them, but the Clippers, man, a little worried. You know, they can't bring back Batum and Jackson on top of the Kawhi injury. It's just really unfortunate because I just don't think that they can find replacement level players on the open market. So if they can, awesome, great management. I think, you know, they got a really good front office there and you know, the Clipper land, but I don't know if they can be able to replace those two guys. We'll see. We will definitely see. That will end this stream. We have only a couple more teams left. We have Brooklyn up next. The Nets, we're going to talk about them going into next year. The Sixers, the Suns, and the Jazz. So the Suns and Jazz will flip. We'll end with the Suns, and then after the Sixers will be the Utah Jazz. So join us. Feel free to subscribe, comment, tell me where I'm wrong, tell me where you think what you think the Clippers should do, and all the other 30 teams in the NBA, because at the end of the night, we'll have all those streams done for the offseason previews, and then we'll be focusing on the draft and then free agency when it opens on Sunday. All right. Thanks, everyone. Let's go ahead and get ready for the next